Telephoto lenses are one of the most exciting ways to explore landscape photography. Matt with B&H here, and in this video, I'm going to talk all about how to use telephoto lenses to get better landscape photos. I'll talk about tips and techniques for using these lenses and really leaning into some of the characteristics that make these lenses so fantastic for landscapes. So let's get into it. When we think of landscape photography, we tend to opt for the widest angle lens, and that makes perfect sense in some cases because we just want to capture the most vast landscapes possible, and I perfectly understand that. However, opting for telephoto lenses introduces some new characteristics that make our landscape results even more unique. One of those characteristics that stands out among other lenses has to be a telephoto lens ability to compress an image. So what that means is when you're capturing a landscape, everything in frame tends to look more dense, tends to look larger, and overall, if I'm being honest, it looks much more epic. A perfect example of this is when you're photographing mountains. Those mountains in frame are going to look more large and much more grand. If you're photographing a heavily wooded area, some trees, those are going to look much more dense and make the image look a lot more full. It also makes objects appear much closer to the camera than they otherwise would be with a wide-angle lens. So overall, the greater the focal length, the more compression that you're going to introduce into your image. Zoom lenses in general offer so much versatility, but telephoto zooms, well, that's where the magic truly happens. Focal ranges like the one I have in front of me with this Tamron 50 to 400 millimeter, I mean, you can capture so many different things. If someone jumps in front of you, then you could zoom out to 50 mil and get a nice portrait of them. But if there's a bear in the hopefully far distance, then you can jump to 400 mil and get a nice picture of them as well. So having that versatility of such a great focal range makes so much of a difference. I'm also exploring with the Tamron 35 to 150 because it's a super fast telephoto lens that I've been really enjoying throughout our time here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. One of my favorite parts about the versatility of those focal ranges is that I can pull multiple compositions out of one scene or one landscape. And I especially noticed this when we were actually at one of the highest points here in the Blue Ridge Mountains for sunrise. The sunrise here has to be one of the most beautiful parts of the day, especially because the Blue Ridge Mountains actually provide a nice contrast of the blue in the foreground on the mountains and a little bit of smoke as well, or fog I should say, and then of course the sun brings in that warmth on the right side of the frame. But just in this one scene on the top of this mountain, I was able to zoom in and capture so many different layers and so many different compositions within this one vast landscape. I even explored frame blending with one of the scenes where I zoomed in way into one of the fog rolling over the hills, and I took multiple exposures which I could then blend and average in post-processing for a nice long exposure result. But you can notice a massive difference in the mountain size between my wide-angle focal length and using those telephoto zooms. It was actually quite the Instagram versus reality moment on top of that mountain because there were so many people around us. I snapped a photo with my wide-angle lens, and thankfully, using the telephoto zoom, I was able to crop in and get some really nice shots of the layers in the background. We did, however, make some friends and got to sing happy birthday to Jen. So Jen, if you're watching, but happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jen. We love you.
One of my absolute favorite techniques when using a telephoto lens is capture a panorama of my entire scene. I typically do this handheld just by scanning and taking a bunch of overlapping photos, which I can later merge in post-processing. All right, so in this scene, I'm on the 50 to 400 millimeter Tamron. We found this overlook here, and we've got this incredible view of some of the Blue Ridge Mountains here. And sunset is almost perfect, hoping a little bit more color comes in as well. Another one of the major benefits of shooting with the telephoto lens has to be the ability to make these highly compressed panoramas and then high resolution panoramas as well. Once we stitch this together, we're just gonna get a massive image. For my settings, I'm shooting at around 1/30th of a second, sometimes going a little higher, and I may have to lower that as the light dissipates. And for my aperture, I'm shooting at around f8, sometimes going up to f11 if I want to get more long exposures. My ISO, right now I'm shooting in auto ISO because there's enough light where I don't have to worry about it getting too high, and this handles noise very well that I'm not worried about my ISO in this moment. And for my white balance, I'm shooting that fixed right now. One major thing to note about telephoto lenses is that since we are at telephoto focal lengths, we're at a greater focal length, that sometimes means that we're going to get one, increased compression, which makes those beautifully compressed result shots, but it also means that a greater focal length reduces your depth of field. And so because of that, we sometimes want to shift our aperture to a little bit higher. And if we have any kind of foreground in our shot, we may have to focus stack. So that's something worth considering when you're at those greater focal lengths. Question often comes up, should you opt for a prime telephoto lens or a zoom telephoto lens? And I've talked a lot about the zooms in this video and the versatility that come with it, and I can't emphasize that enough. Sometimes you can get a faster prime lens, and if you're in low light scenarios, that might be beneficial. However, you can't go wrong with the versatility of a zoom lens. I don't have to opt for carrying a ton of telephoto prime lenses around, which would be both heavy and a little unrealistic in most of our scenarios. So that's why I much prefer opting for a telephoto zoom. All right, we had so much fun running around the Blue Ridge Mountains looking for some telephoto landscape shots, and I think we got some, but now it's time for some post-processing. So I'm gonna show you a couple of images. Let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, I have this somewhat straightforward Blue Ridge Mountains photo that I absolutely love. It is a little bit dark, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the shadows already, and I'm gonna bring up the exposure as a whole as well. And the reason I love this photo so much is because you could see all of the layers of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I'm gonna add a little bit of blue because I think I photographed this a little bit too much on the warmer side with my white balance. And I'm also gonna check on my blacks here on the bottom left. It looks like they are good. A little bit dark on the bottom left there, so I'm gonna go ahead and just brighten that up using my brush tool. And it looks like I picked up a little bit of the edge of something here on the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And also in the corner here. From there, I'm going to add a little bit more contrast, bump up the vibrance just slightly, and the dehaze a little bit, and then also raise my exposure some more. And I could crop in on this photo, and I could pretty much pull multiple images out of one image. And I think this would be great to throw in vertical as well. There's multiple compositions that I could pull out of this one scene. The last thing I'm going to do is actually apply a slight mask to my sky and add some orange up there by using one of these adaptive presets on the top here, just to add a little bit more contrast when it comes to the white balance and the color overall, and then a linear gradient just to bring that in even more. So that way I get a nice orange from the sunrise there all the way to the blue on the mountains. And then I'll add a linear gradient to the bottom here to bring out the blue a little bit more as well. And this is the final result. All right, for this photo, the sun finally came up and we actually got some pretty epic beams coming from the left of frame. I really like this one because I get the dramatic silhouette of the trees in the foreground, and then of course this just ethereal looking clouds in the background on the Blue Ridge Mountains. So to start off with this image, I'm gonna make it a little bit more, I'm gonna cool it down just a little bit because again, I think I had it a little too warm in the white balance. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of dehaze. So I'm just gonna add a brush mask to the foreground here. Because I'm making a minimal adjustment, I don't have to be perfect with this mask. And then turn that off. And then bring up my blacks just a little bit so that they are not completely crushed here. Then I have a slight flare in the corner of the screen here that I want to get rid of. And I already really like that. I'm going to bring up the vibrance of the image a little bit. And then I really like the blue on the right side of the screen here. So I'm going to add a radial gradient and add to that blue just a little bit. And there's a little bit of a green tint on the right top part of the screen. So I'm just trying to combat that by adding a little bit of magenta on that corner. Then I'm going to brighten up these clouds on the horizon just a little bit. This is the final result. So for this one, I actually took a 15 image panorama. So not only do we have an incredibly large landscape scene here that I used the 35-150 on at around 71 mil because I knew that I was going to pan across the entire scene, but I actually took vertical so that I got an even larger field of view. So let's go ahead and look at this panorama here. So I'm going to select my 15 images, and I'm making some exposure adjustments ahead of time. Just bringing up those shadows. Highlight them all, make sure that they are synced. And then I'm going to click Photo Merge Panorama, right click Photo Merge Panorama. And then I'm going to crop the edges that didn't completely align in the merging process. I have auto settings on right now because I probably would have done the same exact thing, to be honest. And then I click merge. All right, and we got it merged here. This looks pretty sweet. Come on now, come on. So look at some of the details here. We got multiple scenes in this one panorama that I could pull out multiple images out of this one photo. That's one of the many reasons that I love panoramas, not to mention the fact that if you print them, they can look pretty epic on the wall. So edit-wise, I'm gonna add a mask to the sky using that Adobe AI mask preset, and then I'm gonna dehaze that just slightly, and then I'm gonna add a linear gradient mask to the very top of the sky to just add more of a gradient that comes down and points more towards the mountains. That way we can draw a little bit more attention towards our mountains in this image. And then I'm going to bring the blues out just a little bit more. Just to make them look a little bit more rich in the photo. All right, this is the final result. Telephoto lenses can really take your landscape photography to the next level, from finding different compositions within one scene to bringing some great compression to your mountains or to your subjects. But let me know in the comments down below, what's your favorite telephoto lens or your favorite focal length to photograph landscapes with? I would love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.